Hello, everyone. Welcome to DevGAMM. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. My name is Micah Davis, and I'm the tech sales lead here at Starloop Studios. Alrighty, so what's this talk about? Well, first I'll give a brief intro to myself, to Starloop Studios, and the tech artists that work at our company. Then I'll talk about a few great games that we all know about. After that, I'll get into the actual meat of the talk, which are the 5 tips and tricks that you can use to really make your game shine, bring it to the next level. And at the end, I'll try my best to answer any questions you might have. Alrighty then, so who is this guy? I'm Micah Davis, like I said. I love my family, I love VR, I love prototyping, and I love problem solving. I work for Starloop Studios as the lead tech sales developer, and I do a little bit of everything. A little bit of code, a little bit of design, sales, producing, speaking, R&D, and teaching. Like I said before, I work for Starloop Studios. We're a video game development outsourcing company based in Spain. We make mobile games, console, VR, PC, you name it. We also handle services such as porting between consoles, NFT drops and metaverse applications, which is the new hot topic recently, asset creation, anything. This year, we're super excited to join Magic Media, an international gaming and entertainment group. So now we have even more muscle to bring your projects to the moon. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at hello@starloopstudios.com, and we'll get back to you shortly. And last but not least, before I get into the material, I just have to give a shout out to the amazing team of tech artists and VFX artists that we have here at Starloop. A special thanks to the lead tech artist, Yonchu, and Mark as well, who helped prepare the presentation, and to the rest of the team that do amazing jobs on all of our clients' projects. The Starloop tech artists are those black magic wizards that solve any problem that's not clear if it's code or art. They do it all. They're just brilliant. So what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. Posterization is a big thing happening right now. You might have seen it in Hades, as well as toon shading. Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Sable all did a great job of these. Posterization I'll talk about in the next step. It's basically showing colors on a step. And toon shading, we've seen it in Zelda very easily. It takes into consideration lighting as well. GPU-driven VFX and particles is also a big thing right now that allows you to get millions of particles in your environment. Real-time engines being used in the film industry. This is huge because it gives a bridge between developers and filmmakers and VFX artists, and awesome chances to grow and expand as well. And they're using real-time technology like Unity or Unreal in the film industry. Part of the reason why they're doing this is also thanks to the fact that these engines are pushing technology forward with new advances. Unity recently acquired Weta Digital, and Unreal 5 just got released. So those are some huge advances in visualization. New illumination workflows and techniques, such as ray tracing, Lumen Global, are some topics you guys can investigate as well. And things that are also being moved forward are real-time complex simulation tools, things that handle stuff like fire, smoke, and water, which require a lot more work than you would imagine to get it to look good. So now we're actually going to get into the meat of the talk. 5 tips and tricks to look into: posterization, alpha erosion, custom UVs and texture panning, and UV distortion. Finally, custom vertex data. These are 5 techniques. I'll go into each one briefly at a very high level of how we can kind of achieve these effects. Posterization, like I mentioned, is a tone reduction system. It's a stylization effect. It's used to filter and reduce the amount of tones in a texture based on the number of discrete steps. So as you can see in the GIF here, there's basically a number of steps that you can vary, and based on that, you have more or less colors. How do you do this? Well, in Unity, it's as easy as using the posterize node. People might know the effect in Hades. You can see here in the shoulder or in the characters, they have white, gray, dark gray, then black, or yellow, then red, then orange, then black again. This is a really good example of where it can be used, but it's been used in multiple games throughout history as well, not just in Hades. Another effect is called alpha erosion, making things disappear, basically. If you want your fire to burn stuff, anything burning paper, burning cloth, explosions, any dissolve, holograms, basically what you do is you render or you don't render part of the material based on a threshold. This threshold can come from a mask and from cutoff thresholds. If the value that you're given is below that value, it gets killed. And if it's above that value, you keep it. This can be used in so many different ways. We can use gradients, we can use noises, we can use spatial channels. Here, the creativity is the limit on how you can make things appear or disappear. Custom UVs and texture panning. This is a very interesting technique. It requires a lot of knowledge, not only in the visual art, but also in modeling and retopology. The artist needs to have information about how to unwrap their model and put custom unwraps, custom UVs, so that you have, for example, in this ribbon, you can see assigning 0 to one side and 1 to the other. By grading between 0 and 1, you can pass the texture along the UV of the mesh. This is just one example. It's used in sword slashes, flares, magic trails, ribbons. It's super used. And if the UVs are in a fixed position and you have the texture that slides beneath it, that's basically how you achieve this effect. Distortion, UV distortion. This is a cool effect that allows us to achieve features like fluid, like lava, like water. If we use textures that are called flow maps, and we can also achieve cool patterns and unique behaviors if we use distortion. This one's a little bit more complex, but what it requires is just directly modifying the UVs. By distorting the UVs, by expanding, stretching, pulling on them, tweaking them at runtime, you can get a really cool effect. You can see in this picture in the GIF here, as the wave expands, there is a mask that shows or hides part of the texture. But also, if you look closely, it took me forever to see it, but I zoomed in and did it. There's this really cool effect going on here as well that's very subtle, is having in the center of the mask, or when you're far away from the mask, be big orange dots. Whereas when you're close to the mask, the dots get smaller. And so there's a ramp up and the values change the size of that. This is just one small feature, but it's distorting the visualization as well. And finally, last but not least, one of the most complex ones of the talk that I was discussing is this really cool technique called custom vertex data. It allows you to reuse materials. It's super good for performance, super great for mobile. You can set up one material and set up 5 or 6 variables and then tweak those variables at runtime to then give you multiple different materials that can be only drawn in one render pass. Some examples of this and how to achieve it. What actually is it? What do you do? It's a way for the particle system to modify and tweak the shader properties at runtime. This is a small motif to have the particle system be the one that modifies things. By exposing UV values and activating the custom vertex streams, I'll show that on the next slide, if you're in Unity. And if you're in Unreal, you need to use a dynamic parameter node. This allows us to have the particle system control the material. So for example, if the emission, you could modify the intensity of this emission or the texture panning speeds based on the lifetime of the particle. So if the particle has been alive for a long time, then it would go faster or slower or be more or less visible. Another cool thing you can use this for is thresholds for second dissolve layers. You can use it to modify and tweak the dissolve layer value threshold to then create even more effects. And you can also use it to achieve soft padding, particles that are soft when they're near the ground, so they don't just have a rough clipping between the floor and the particle. You can see here in the GIF, here we're manually modifying this custom data, but it's the particle system that ideally would control it. Zooming in a little bit, how to expose those values. You have the UVs that need to be exposed as values, and then you can split them and access the X and the Y would be used for probably the textures of the color of the character, but then you have these other available positions, the Z and the W, that can be used as well. in the first channel, and then you have, I think, 2, 3, or 4 other additional channels that you can use. If you're not using them for your character, you have all of the values available. You can multiply the vertex color times the UVs, and when you're in the inspector, you need to make sure that you enable this tick. This toggle is called custom vertex streams. If you enable that one, that will allow these properties to be visible in custom data. Custom data then appears up here above, where you can tweak and modify the value of, as we're doing in the image, to make that higher or less. All right. I went through that very quickly. I apologize if that was too fast or too in-depth or too above your knowledge. I wasn't quite sure who was going to be attending the conference, so I tried to just keep it at a high level. If you have any questions that are really, really pro, it would be great to put you in touch with our team of tech artists that can maybe help you get unblocked. If you need help making your game, hello@starloopstudios.com. And if you want to ask me any personal questions, I'm always available at micah.davis@starloopstudios.com. Thank you so much for your attention, and it's a pleasure to be here. I apologize for the technical difficulties I had.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Micah. I think we have a lot of questions. The first one is from Irina. VFX from which games have impressed you lately?
Which games have impressed me lately? I'm a sucker for Pokemon. I'm a sucker for anything Nintendo. I love the Zelda games. I'm looking forward to Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 coming out. Can't wait for that to come out whenever it gets announced. Recently, what game have I played? There's a couple of games. See, the effects that are surprising are the ones that we're working on now, and so I can't say them. Dang it. I've been enjoying seeing all of the ones that are coming out. There's some great IPs that are about to be released really soon. I'm looking forward to those.
Mm-hmm. All right. The next one is from Arthur. Which shader editor do you use in Unity? Do you prefer using Amplify shader editor or Unity shader graph or another solution?
Mm-hmm. This one comes down to personal preference. It comes down to the skills that you know. Shader Amplify is the one that I've used in the past because I got into shaders a little bit, like a high level, before Shader Graph was publicly launched. So I had that kind of advanced knowledge prior in time. But then Shader Graph got more public and got used by a lot more people. So it's definitely a good standard. I would recommend learning the in-house and anything, because even if you don't have the nodes in one, you can learn the tech in the other, and knowing how to do it is the important part, not necessarily the which platform you use, whether it be which tool you use. Also, Unreal also has some amazing effects that you can do too, and I personally haven't tinkered as much with Unreal, but just looking what the team has been doing, it just blows my mind.
Okay, and the next one, a question from Vladislav. Which VFX will be better for the bulk materials, like grain or flow? Flow map, maybe.
Which textures would be better for what? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, which would be better for the bulk materials, like grain or flour, or for example, sand?
Okay, what materials would be better for using those? You definitely want something tileable so that you can expand it and repeat and repeat and repeat. It's important to also take into consideration, and I apologize if I'm not answering this correctly, so I might have misunderstood the question. It's also important to take into consideration how tileable it is, because if you just get something that's a really repetitive pattern, you'll see it obvious repeating itself. Granularity. I think I misunderstood the question.
I think it's about comparison of grain in motion with water. For example, when you have some maybe bucket of grain and you can rotate it and it falls, is it comparable to water? Or, for example, lava.
So, I see. Okay. Yeah. So these are two different effects then. Usually what happens with water effects and fire effects, like I mentioned in the UVs flow maps, you can create an effect that kind of simulates it. A lot of fire and water is all simulate is tricks, it's hacks, it's black magic that just fakes it. It's nothing real. With grain or flour, little particles, my mind would go immediately to like advanced simulation where you'd have hundreds of little spheres rolling around, but that's super complex and doesn't fit well in mobile, for example. So yes, you would want to look for some kind of hack to get around there. If you're looking for how to handle grain, I could definitely ask Yanshu. Please ping me an email and I can at least send you a small comment of what his thoughts are.
Okay, great. And the next question from Arthur too. Which software do you prefer for painting VFX textures? Maybe plugins?
I haven't painted many textures recently. Like I said, I kind of do a little bit of everything, but I'm not totally into stuff. The ones that I personally use, and everybody will make fun of me, I use GIMP just because it's free. But then there's Photoshop is great for stuff if you have the money to have that, or your company has the licenses. I know a couple of tools I've used in the past in Unity editors. There's a couple of add-ons that you can do that let you kind of pixel art that then you can use as a texture that export internally into the editor. But I'd have to look up for the name of that. I haven't touched that in a while.
All right, so we are still waiting for new questions. And great thanks to the audience for these questions. And also thank you to Micah for your great speech.
My pleasure, I enjoyed it and it's been fun to be here. And
great.
Looking forward to the next time we can talk in person and maybe actually meet each other.
Sure.